Featuring Klystron 9.
Well, the time is now 6:59. Here we are headed into the 7 o'clock hour. A good Monday evening to you. I'm meteorologist Brian McClure. Did you notice all the cloud cover out there? Absolutely. This morning, sunny skies. This afternoon and this evening, tons of cloud cover, but no showers in the area tonight. So a dry evening, even though it will look rather overcast. There you can see our live view down at St. Pete Beach at the Tradewinds Resort right now. And yes, mostly cloudy skies, but again, not that bad of an evening. Actually, pretty nice. Temperatures are in the 70s to low 80s, so not like summertime heat, but definitely warmer than what we saw over the weekend. With all that in mind, for tonight, forecast is straightforward. Mostly cloudy skies, not as cool as what we saw over the weekend, but still what I would consider in the comfortable range, with lows generally low to mid 60s north, upper 60s inland, and low 70s at the beach. We'll have more weather updates for you coming up after the special Attorney General debate coming up next.
This special edition of Political Connections, The Race for Attorney General, is brought to you by Jim's Famous Steaks.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this special edition of Political Connections. I'm Al Rochelle.
And I'm Yvette Brusual.
And I'm Tampa Bay Times political editor Adam Smith.
Now, over the next hour, we're going to learn more about the three candidates running for Attorney General.
Now on to the rules for the debate, everybody. We're going to start with questions that address the biggest issues facing the Attorney General.
Now, some of those questions are going to come from myself, Ebeth, and Adam. Others will come from viewer videos. Each candidate will have either 60 seconds or just 30 seconds to respond.
All right, we'll decide who will actually answer the question and how much time each one of them will have to answer, so it doesn't get too confusing. We'll be timing your answers, and we will interrupt if the candidates do not stop talking. We're not trying to be rude here. We just have so much to cover in a short amount of time.
Now, don't forget, you can also join in the debate on Twitter and Facebook at #AGDebate. Now, we are going to start things off with an opening statement from each candidate. Each candidate will get 90 seconds each. We will go in alphabetical order, starting with Attorney General Pam Bondi. Ms. Bondi, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you, and thank you to our moderators, and thank you to my opponents so much, and I look forward to a very productive debate. As you know, I've been a prosecutor for nearly 2 decades, and prosecuting every kind of crime imaginable, from brutality against children to children of sex crimes to home invasions, murders, and you know, as Attorney General, I've taken that further, and what motivates me every day is helping people, and that's why I ran for Attorney General, to help people and make a difference. And that's what I've continued to do as Attorney General. Of the pill mills in Florida, the top 100 oxycodone dispensers in the entire country, 98 of them lived in Florida. We fought long and hard for tough legislation, and now of those 98, none live in Florida. Human trafficking, we've been going after human trafficking. It ranks 3rd in the entire country to the calls to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. We have a case pending right now that you'll probably get to hear about later, going to trial, a human trafficking case. We've started a council on human trafficking case. I've been to Mexico City to try to see what we can do on an international level to stop this horrific crime. We fought identity theft. We're helping consumers. We've received multi-millions of dollars back for our consumers, and I will continue everything to do that I can possibly do as your Attorney General, because that's what motivates me every day, helping people. I've never run for office, only Attorney General, and I'm here to be your Attorney General. Thank you.
All right, next, George Sheldon, you have 90 seconds. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion so that the people of Florida learn more about the three of us. Thanks to Bay News 9, thanks to News 13 as we move forward. Having been Deputy Attorney General to Bob Butterworth, I know what that office can do. It can be on the forefront of dealing with unscrupulous lenders, predatory lending, foreclosures. The Attorney General ought to be the people's lawyer, not the governor's lawyer, not the legislature's lawyer, but on the forefront. Let's take Medicaid fraud, for instance. This state is probably 3rd in the country in terms of Medicaid fraud. We ought to be aggressively seeking out those who would defraud Medicaid. And it's providers, it's not recipients. The Attorney General is the chief legal officer of Florida. primary responsibility is to the people of Florida and to the United States Constitution. Secondly, the Florida Constitution. So as we move forward in this discussion, I hope that you'll get a better view as to what the candidates' positions are, but I also think that you'll begin to realize just the difference between what we're offering to the people of Florida.
All right, Mr. Sheldon, and now finally, Mr. Bill Wohlsifer. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Bright House Networks, for including me and inviting me to this debate. And I thank Bay News 9, and I thank the candidates for all the preparation I know has gone into this. I am Bill Wohlsifer. I'm the Libertarian candidate. I'm glad that we have 3 parties included here today, so we've got a full reach to the Florida voters of various points of view. The third party, the Libertarian Party, is the fastest growing party of voter registration in Florida. In fact, it's up 12% recently, while the other 2 party registration is shrinking. I moved to Florida in 1985, down from New Jersey. I became a lawyer in 1996. It was actually a career change for me. I was 42 years old when I started to practice law. And prior to that, I'd been self-employed all my adult life, except for 2.5 years as a civil prosecutor with Florida DBPR. And in private practice, I went right into private practice upon graduating. I covered multiple areas of law, from securities law, real estate, criminal, personal injury, foreclosure. I've been on both sides. I've foreclosed and I defended foreclosures. So I bring experience. I've been signing paychecks since 1970s. I've been creating jobs since the 1970s. I've been practicing law since 1996. I live in Tallahassee. I'm anxious for this position. I'm ready for this position. And I'm anxiously looking forward to the moderator's questions and the great debate we're going to have this evening.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wohlsifer.
All right, let's get to it. To the first question is, how would you approach this job? In years past, different attorney generals have taken their different point of view and their stance on it, but I want to know your philosophy on this job. You'll have 60 seconds to answer, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, we'll start with you.
That's easy. To make Florida the safest place to live, work, and raise a family. That's why I was a prosecutor my entire career, and that's why I'm Attorney General. To fight Medicaid fraud, and let me give you a number. $460.8 million. That's how much my Medicaid fraud unit has
have to interrupt you because we have to stick to our time. Next up would be George Sheldon.
Well, I think the principal responsibility of an Attorney General is to protect. Protect us from unscrupulous lenders, protect us from mortgage fraud, protect us from pill mills and human trafficking. He or she ought to be on the forefront of these consumer issues moving forward.
And next for you, sir.
I perceive the principal role of the Attorney General as a protector of civil liberties. Now, we've moved into prosecution as the primary role, but forgetting that civil liberties is first. And I say that because here in Florida, the Fourth Amendment has been practically absolved. We have constitutional free zones around the airports and 100 miles from the border. Consumer protection also includes voter protection, and with that also includes voter access to information, campaign public financing, and beyond prosecution. Prosecution is a huge part, but not the sole responsibility.
We just had a little timing goof, so Pam, you got 30 more seconds to talk about this topic. We apologize for that.
Oh, sure. Well, as Attorney General, I focused on everything that my opponent has mentioned sitting next to me. I focused on human trafficking. We are going to make this a zero-tolerance state for human trafficking. We've shut down the pill mills. We are going after synthetic drugs, which is really heroin, which is killing our kids. We're fighting identity theft. We're taking on Medicaid fraud. I've expanded my Medicaid fraud unit, and we're protecting our consumers.
All right, thank you.
Our second question is going to come from one of our viewers. Let's take a listen.
If elected or re-elected, what would be the focus of your next 4 years in office?
You're going to have 30 seconds for this response. Let's start with Mr. Sheldon.
Well, thank you. My primary focus initially is to really beef up the Medicaid fraud unit. And I appreciate what Ms. Bondi is saying about what's been done in Medicaid fraud, but there's so much more we can do. We should not be the third largest state in the country in terms of fraud. Secondarily, white-collar crime. We've got to be on the forefront moving forward in dealing with white-collar crime. I was with a group of young women just this week in Tallahassee who were harmed substantially by a medical device made by major producers. 100,000 cases nationwide against Johnson & Johnson and others on the vaginal mesh case.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Mr. Wohlsifer.
Thank you. What I would do over the next 4 years is the reason I am running. Our Attorney General's office runs well. It's a large machine, almost 1,300 employees with a substantial budget. Medicaid fraud, fighting against crime are traditional. I want to bring some new focus. I want to focus on the debate in Florida's legal affairs that's been omitted, such as same-sex marriage, medicinal use of marijuana, protecting, again, of civil rights. These are issues that are on the forefront of the Attorney General's responsibility, on the front of everyone's mind, and yet we keep turning back to traditional roles.
Okay, Ms. Bondi, your focus in a second term?
Sure, and just so my opponent knows, we've changed the name of the white-collar unit to consumer protection because that's what it's all about, protecting our consumers. And $10.2 billion, that's what we've recovered for consumers. I was on the executive committee of the national mortgage crisis, and I'm so proud of that, bringing all that money back to Floridians. As to the case that he mentioned, the vaginal mesh case, we have been on the executive committee of that. My office, I know you weren't living in D.C. at the time, but we have been on the executive committee for that. There are 4 companies actually involved for the last 2 years. So we're working very, very hard to protect our consumers and fight identity theft and protect our seniors and protect our children.
All right, let's move on to another question. This is our third question, deals with Amendment 2. 60% of the voters need to approve the medical marijuana proposal for it to pass. If it passes, how do you think that bill will affect the Attorney General's office? You will have 30 seconds for this answer. Start with Bill Wohlsifer.
When it passes, it will affect the Attorney General's office in an enormous way because the Attorney General is responsible for the controlled substance list. We're already at issue with the passage of SB 1030, the so-called Charlotte-Weber CDB bill, where we have Schedule 1 controlled substance for cannabis, yet our legislature has recognized cannabis as having medicinal value. The Attorney General has to fix that. So the implementation of the passage of Amendment 2 is critical for the Attorney General. I'm the best one to do that because I've been a leader on this issue for patients in Florida.
Ms. Bondi, 30 seconds.
Well, this ballot initiative scares me. Do I want to hurt anyone in a wheelchair? Do I want to hurt anyone with a terminal illness? Of course not. I lost my father to leukemia a year and a half ago. Would I want to hurt anyone who needs a drug? No. But the unintended consequences are children could get this. This could fall in the hands of 12-year-olds, the way this is written, without parental consent, and the doctors who prescribe it would have full immunity from the civil bar. Your paper, the St. Pete Times, they've come out against it. The Tribune's come out against it, as well as 7 former Florida Supreme Court justices. But if it's passed, I'll defend it because that's my job as Attorney General.
Mr. Sheldon, same question to you.
Well, there's been so much rhetoric about medical marijuana, and that's what concerns me. We've got to start listening to scientists and doctors on this issue. As we move forward, if this passes, and the Attorney General is going to be working with the Department of Health, making sure that the kind of regulatory structure is in place. I've heard all this discussion, and you see it now in terms of TV ads, about caregivers. This is no different than a caregiver for a citizen whose doctor prescribes oxycodone or doctor prescribes other kinds of things. I happen to trust the doctors of this state in terms of how they prescribe this medication. So there's going to be a lot going forward, but I'm very concerned about the rhetoric.
Let's carry this a step further if we could. We're going to talk about medical marijuana, the amendment specifically. What's your personal view of the medical marijuana amendment? And you've got 1 minute to answer this now, your personal view about the amendment itself. Mr. Wohlsifer.
Thank you. Well, I wrote the Kathy Jordan Medical Cannabis Act in 2012, and that was brought forward in both chambers of the Senate and the House in 2013 and 2014. It did not move forward out of committee, but that's my commitment to what I think of medical cannabis. It is so important for the patients. It's so important to the caregivers who need to care for those patients. Look around and you know, I know everyone knows someone with cancer, someone with ALS. For cancer, we're still using the 30-year-old protocol of chemotherapy and radiation. I brought forward the Kathy Jordan bill, which is much broader than Amendment 2. So what do I think of Amendment 2? I don't think it goes far enough. I'm certainly not concerned about 12-year-olds having access any more than we need to be concerned about minors having access to liquor. Florida can regulate this product as well as it regulates other dangerous or even not so dangerous products.
Ms. Bondi?
A minute or 30 seconds?
You got on this one, 1 minute. One minute.
Okay, 1 minute. Okay. Even when Mr. Wohlsifer wrote his bill, it did not include any other condition. You listed debilitating illnesses. Your bill was 174 pages. This one is only 2 pages. And first of all, I don't want to give my personal belief because I am a sitting attorney general, but let me tell you what we argued in front of the court. That this was overbroad, that 12-year-olds would be able, or teens, would be able to get their hands on it, and that that the doctors who prescribed it, and Mr. Sheldon, I'm sorry, I don't have full faith in all our doctors after shutting down the pill mills. I think we're going to have a pot clinic on every corner, and that the doctors who prescribed it would have full immunity, and that's why 7 former, from the most liberal to the most conservative former Florida Supreme Court justices came out against this, as well as the Tampa Bay Times, as well as the Tribune, as well as Jeb Bush, many people. So again, I just urge everyone to read the entire amendment, which once again is only 2 pages.
Mr. Sheldon?
Well, you know, as I've gone around the state, I've talked to so many people who have told me about a sick relative. I talked to a prosecutor in North Florida. He said, I've come 180 degrees on this issue because my son came down with cancer, and I needed something to affect the nauseous feeling that that was keeping him from getting chemotherapy. The fact of the matter is he got straight THC because he could afford to do it, which is not available to most citizens in this country. What Ms. Bondi is talking about in terms of not trusting doctors, there are bad doctors out there, but that's the reason we have laws. Every constitutional amendment is written in broad terms so that the legislature can work on the specificity of how to regulate that. That can be done in this case. Every medication, there's discretion with the doctor if the doctor feels that's an appropriate medication for that patient. So let's not separate medical marijuana, non-euphoric marijuana, from those other medications that we give the authority to doctors to prescribe.
All right, moving on now to the 5th question. This one is about felons' rights, another very hot topic that everybody keeps talking about, especially during the election time. Former Governor Charlie Crist made it easier, many people say, for former felons, who have completed their sentence to regain their civil rights. The state has backtracked on that, and now it's a process that can take up to not 1, not 2, but 3 years. Shouldn't it be easier and faster for felons, that's the question, who have completed their sentence to get their rights back? This will be a 30-second response. Pam Bondi, we'll start with you.
My opponent has said that he believes in automatic restoration of rights unless you committed first-degree murder or a sex crime against a child. Hey, I am a career prosecutor. Don't tell that to a rape victim, that a defendant should automatically get their rights restored. Don't tell that to someone who was kidnapped and thrown in the back of a car, their entire family. Don't tell that to a woman who was beaten so badly beyond recognition that she lost her baby by her boyfriend or her husband. Don't tell that to people. So no, do I believe in it? No. I believe you have to ask for your rights and remain crime-free, and then we will be more than willing to consider giving rights back.
I have to stop you right there. And now, Mr. Sheldon.
Well, this is the first thing that Governor Scott and Pam Bondi did in the cabinet, was to revoke the positions that had been taken by Bob Butterworth and Charlie Crist. And what I identified is there are certain crimes that I would exempt. The 3 that I gave, and I also included crimes violating the public trust, well, those were 3 examples of the kinds of things that we ought to look at in terms of actually requiring a hearing. But if you've got a drug arrest that's years old and you've paid your debt to society, you need to be part of the full community. You need to be part of society.
That's it. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I've got to move on to Mr. Wohlsifer.
Thank you. I believe in full restoration upon release. I've heard the examples our Attorney General just gave, but let's not forget the person may have already served 20 years. The person is not the same one who committed that crime. If we're going to release these folks back into our community, we got to allow them to become productive members. Now, some people might think restoration of civil rights is a voting right. It's not just that. It's an occupational right, a right to be a hair braider, a hair cutter, to sell used cars. So how are you going to get back on your feet if you have 7 or 5 years of having your hands tied behind your back?
Thank you.
Thanks. Another 30-second question. If one of you is elected, you're going to be serving either with Governor Scott, Governor Crist, or even possibly Governor Wiley. So starting with you, George, what's your biggest disagreement with Rick Scott and with Charlie Crist?
Well, the concern I have...
I'll say biggest disagreement and where you agree the most.
With Governor Scott?
Both.
Well, with Governor Scott, I've got serious concerns about where he's taken this state. I've got serious concerns about the secrecy that exist in this state government, denying reporters like you access to emails. I've got serious concerns about denying 1.1 million people Medicaid expansion when we know what that can do. These are the poorest of the poor who are not getting Medicaid. They're working, but they don't make enough to get Medicaid.
What's he done well?
Well, it would take me a long time to lay out.
Mr. Wohlsifer, what's Charlie Crist done best and worst? What's Rick Scott done best and worst?
Well, going back to the Crist administration, one thing I like is what we just touched on, that he did restore felon rights upon release. As to what did Mr. Crist do worse, I think he deserted his party for personal reasons when he ran for the Senate and then jumped again. So a little question comes to mind there. As to Governor Scott, Crist, or Wiley, I would look forward to serving with any one of those three. They're all honorable gentlemen.
Bondi, 30 seconds.
Well, when Charlie Crist was governor, he has changed his position virtually on every issue out there. I'm not going to waste any more time talking about that. Governor Scott has brought 620,000 jobs to the state of Florida. He has lowered unemployment by 4.9%. That's almost unheard of in this country. And it's my job for those people that come to live here to make Florida the safest place to live, work, and raise a family.
Any significant disagreement with Governor Scott?
Not significant, absolutely not. No one's going to agree on everything. I don't think anyone in this room would agree on everything, but that's why we're all independently elected officials.
Speaking of not agreeing, let's move on to our next question. The Affordable Care Act still isn't very popular with a lot of residents. Our latest Bay News 9, News 13, Tampa Bay Times, Graham Center poll showed 83% of likely voters either want some kind of changes or a repeal to the Affordable Care Act altogether. Only 13% wanted to keep it as it is. So here's the question. What should happen next, and what's the Attorney General's role in that process? This is going to be a 60-second response. Bill, we'll start with you.
All right, thank you. Well, that is a hot topic, and I have the unique opportunity today to sit with two sides of that topic. The Attorney General has led the fight against the Affordable Care Act for first 2 years of her term, unsuccessfully for reasons beyond this short discussion, whereas Mr. Sheldon was with the Department of Human Services, who participated in the rollout of healthcare.gov that also had its failures. So uniquely, and also, Mr. Sheldon mentioned about the Medicaid donut hole we have, the lack of expansion. I think that we have to face the fact that the Affordable Care Act is the law. The challenges that originated in the Senate to that House, that has failed as well in July. It is the law. The Attorney General has to implement the law, and we also have to reach out to that gap of the poor people who are working and fall in between coverage.
Ms. Bondi.
I do agree that we have to implement the law now that it is law, but one point that we did win on, and I'm very proud of challenging that, is that the federal government cannot force us to purchase a product simply by being alive. And that's a huge win on a much broader level. You know, you cannot force someone to purchase a product. The disaster was a rollout. My opponent ran. Basically, his announcement was saying he was running because I challenged Obamacare, and he helped draft it. And, you know, this was sold to the American people on the basis of lies. I'm not saying you lied, but the law was sold on the basis of a lie. And even this Tampa Bay Times called it the lie of the year. People's premiums have doubled. People are losing insurance. Businesses are hurting. People's hours are being cut back at work. And this is a tremendous disaster for our state, but I will follow the law.
Mr. Sheldon, did you help draft it?
Well, I appreciate that she's giving me credit for drafting the Affordable Care Act. It was actually drafted 2 years before I got there. It passed then. But, you know, there's no question that we need to make some adjustments in the Affordable Care Act. I think everybody recognizes that. We did that with Medicare Part D that passed under Ronald Reagan. Democrats opposed it, but they knew that needed some changes. What I understand, as you talk to people, they don't want to go back to the days when pre-existing conditions were not covered. They don't want to go back to the days when there were lifetime limits. They don't want to go back to the days when health insurance didn't cover basic screenings like mammograms and others. They don't want to return to those days. Medicaid expansion, one of the things that they fought so hard against. To say we're not covering 1.1 million people in this state, most of whom are children, that's fundamentally wrong. with 100% federal money. And the point I would also point out, it's not federal money, it's Florida's money. And where did it go? It went to states like California and New York.
All right, candidates, thank you so much. Our special edition of the Attorney General's debate will continue right after we take a short break. Stay with us if you would.
Big Jim's Famous Steaks and Tap House. We're your neighborhood pub. Stop by and try one of our famous Philadelphia cheesesteaks and overstuffed sandwiches. Hand-tossed New York-style pizza. Over 45 craft, micro, and domestic beers. Your favorite wines. Jumbo wings and delicious barbecue specials. Relax and catch all the games on one of our big screen TVs. And don't forget our daily drink specials from 4 to 7. Big Jim's Famous Steaks and Tap House. Ulmerton Road in Largo, a quarter-mile west of Starkey. Open 11 a.m. till late.
I laughed, I cried, I told my friends it's a real life drama I recommend. It touches your heart, it opens your mind. It's part of your history, part of our times. Every day's another sequel, the ending's up to you. The amazing story, the amazing story, it never ends.
Bay News 9 announces the most advanced app for weather on the go, Bay News 9 Plus. Now you can have the power of live Klystron 9 radar in the palm of your hand. Bay News 9 Plus puts you in control. It's the only app with live interactive weather featuring Klystron 9. Add favorite locations to personalize your weather map. Plus, get current conditions with a single tap. No other weather app gives you this kind of power. Get your free download now. Bay News 9 Plus, exclusively from Bright House Networks.
And welcome back to our special edition of Political Connections, the Attorney General debate. I'm Al Rochelle.
And I'm Ibeth Brusual. Don't forget, you can join in on the debate on Twitter and Facebook using the hashtag AGDebate. Okay, so our next question comes to us from a viewer. It's about gay marriage. Let's take a listen.
I'd like to know what their positions are in terms of perhaps overturning the gay marriage ban that we have in the state of Florida and actually recognizing the existence of gay marriage and how they perceive that affecting the state.
All right, everybody, this will be a 1 minute answer. 1 minute answer. We'll start with you, Pam Bondi.
Sure. When I was sworn in as Florida's 37th Attorney General, I put my hand on the Bible and I swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Florida. The voters by 60% put this in our Constitution 6 years ago. But let me tell you, what our viewer may not know, they just received the plaintiffs in the case just received a huge win today. I'm not sure if my opponents are familiar with that. But the 10th Circuit, the U.S. Supreme Court denied cert, meaning they would not hear cases in the 10th Circuit, the 7th, and I believe the 4th, meaning now that gay marriage licenses will be issued in Oklahoma, Utah, Virginia, and a few other states in those circuits. So there was a tremendous win today. My office, I think it just came out less than 3 hours ago, will be reviewing that, see what happens next. There are a lot of other cases in the pipeline. What I've always said is that the court must decide this. We need finality from the judiciary. I think we can all agree we're members of the executive branch. We're not the Supreme Court.
I do want to follow up, though. It was a tremendous win, as you say. So any thought to now giving up the defense, like a lot of people are suggesting?
Well, there are other cases in other states. The Sixth Circuit, in fact, is still out there pending. So we're going to see what they do in the Sixth Circuit. We're going to be looking at other cases. We're going to be reviewing everything in Florida to see what to do next. And again, it just came out less than 3 hours ago. But it is a tremendous win for the plaintiffs in this case.
Mr. Sheldon, your turn. You have 1 minute.
Well, the Supreme Court of the United States today basically said there are no disagreements among the circuits. There are no conflicts among the circuits. There's been uniformity. Some 39 federal and state courts have now thrown that ban out. I've asked Ms. Bondi immediately after the Supreme Court ruled to drop the appeals, because the reality is with the Supreme Court decision in DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, with their decision in the California a ban on same-sex marriage, it is now clear that there is no conflict in the circuits, and we ought to be doing the same thing here. And let me point out, government Government ought to get out of business of telling people who they can love. It ought to get out of the business of interfering with a woman and her doctor and decisions she makes about her reproductive health. We have moved full circle as a society, and we need to respect that and move forward. The last point I would make about Ms. Bondi is she points out quite accurately that she has a responsibility to defend the Constitution of Florida, but she has a higher responsibility, and that is to defend the Constitution of the United States. It is now clear with the Supreme Court's action what that means.
Okay, now Mr. Wohlsifer.
Wohlsifer, thank you very much, Bill Wohlsifer. I'm proud to say that I'm with the party that supported gay marriage, same-sex marriage, since 1972, unequivocally. The Democratic Party added it to its plank in 2012. So finally, both establishment parties are coming over. Our courts are coming over. No one said it better than our federal judge in Tallahassee that liberty comes slower for some than others. You know, in 1976, up until 1976, interracial marriages were not allowed. So finally, we're there. The Windsor decision in October 2013, I think, was conclusive on this point. I think the Attorney General exhausted a lot of resources of the citizens of the state by fighting and by appealing 5 losses. I understand that we have a constitutional amendment from 2008, yet because the decision in Windsor was made through the 5th Amendment under equal protection of the law, incorporated to the state through the 14th Amendment, it was very foreseeable that it would be binding, and I think that the challenge has gone on too far, and it's time to stop.
Thank you. Let's move on. Public corruption. There are those that want to see the public corruption laws in the state beefed up so that state law enforcement could tackle corruption. Is public corruption a problem, a significant problem in Florida, and are our current laws sufficient? We'll start with Mr. Sheldon.
Well, just your newspaper, just yesterday, basically indicated that the governor has significant holdings in oil and gas companies, and that there are those, for instance, the Jacksonville GE plant where he owns stock in a company that was affiliated with GE. They get a $5.1 million state incentive. The plant down in Southwest Florida, where they rush through a DEP permit to allow them to begin testing for oil. Then they get fined for fracking. You know, I would call on the Attorney General to begin to look at what this discrepancy is with Governor Scott between what he said on his financial disclosure to the state and what he said on his SEC filings.
Mr. Wohlsifer.
Public corruption is obviously a problem in Florida because many polls say that it's the worst in Florida out of the union. And why is that? Well, it's what we call crony capitalism. Insider deals, follow the purse. What can be done? I think a strong view from opposing parties. We have the stronghold of 2 parties that run this state as well as that run this country. Quick example, public campaign financing applies to the establishment parties but not to third-party candidates. So as long as we have 2 parties in control, we're not going to be able to penetrate that.
Thank you. Ms. Bondi, on public corruption, I don't know if you want to respond to Mr. Sheldon's suggestion that the Attorney General should look at the governor's finances.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how a politician talks, not an Attorney General. And let me tell you, first of all, to imply that our governor is corrupt, that's not appropriate for any candidate to say that, nor an Attorney General to say that, based on a newspaper article. That's completely inappropriate. Let me tell you what I've done as Attorney General. I took on my own party head, and Jim Greer, and he's now in prison. We fought Jim Greer. We put him in prison, my statewide prosecutor, and he did a great job. In Jacksonville, we went after allied veterans. They were defrauding people. Terry Mathis, an attorney, is in prison. There's a police officer being charged as well. I spoke with my statewide prosecutor, Nick Cox, this morning. I said, have we ever turned down anything to do with public corruption? And he said, absolutely not. And public corruption is rampant, and I would be glad if we had more jurisdiction over public corruption in general in the Attorney General's office.
Well, let's talk about something else we mentioned earlier. Consumer protection is handled in part, and this is kind of a weird split in Florida, by the Agricultural Department and the Attorney General's office. Do you see a need to improve consumer protection by the state? And if there is, how would you do it? A 30-second response. Mr. Wohlsifer, you're first.
All right, thank you. I actually think the Attorney General does a great job on consumer protection. As far as dividing it between the Department of Agriculture, where complaints are received, I don't think that is an issue. I think consumer protection is being handled well. as Attorney General, I'd like to meet everyone that's working on that and continue on the path that our Attorney General's been on.
Ms. Bondi.
Thank you. And I'll tell you, I'm so proud of being on the executive committee of the National Mortgage Settlement. And for people to say that we don't go after large corporations, we went after the 5 largest banks in the entire country, and I sat on the executive committee. I could talk all day long about what we've done in consumer protection, and we're so very, very proud of that. We're helping homeowners we've gone after national pools who are, and you know, a lot of the victims in consumer protection are seniors. Window tinting. I know that sounds minor, but it's not, because they have a false sense of security during hurricanes. Travel clubs, fake charities, business-to-business scams, people posing as unscrupulous contractors. I could go on and on. Aquin Financial, we received over a $2 billion national settlement that I co-chaired.
Mr. Sheldon, same thing for you.
Well, the first thing I will say, having been in the Attorney General's office, there are some extremely good lawyers and some extremely good investigators in that agency. Let's take the mortgage foreclosure settlement. Pam Bondi was the only Attorney General of the 7 who made the settlement, who held out to the very last minute to say none of the foreclosure settlement money should go to homeowners to reduce their mortgages. She basically said that they should not benefit from a bad decision that they made signing, even though they received fraudulent mortgages. She changed her mind at the last minute after California withdrew from that settlement. And California, which would have gotten about $3 billion under the settlement agreement, wound up ultimately getting about $18 billion by going independently. The bulk of what came to Florida, about a third of it, actually was swept off to go into trust funds, and general revenue were taken out of that. In addition to that, it set up foreclosure courts, which were designed to accelerate foreclosures, not to benefit consumers.
Wrap it up. 15 seconds to respond.
I need to respond to this. First of all, my counterpart in California received the highest amount. We never backed off anything. We held tight because Florida got a $5.4 billion guarantee, and I'm so proud of that. I'm proud of our success on that. And let me tell you, California, every penny of that money Jerry Brown took and went right back into California's tremendous budget deficit. That did not happen in Florida. I worked with the legislators. Over 90,000 Floridians have been helped, and hundreds of millions of dollars went to legal aid, went to homeowners to help them, and I've also set up a place in my office to help homeowners as well. We're very proud of what we did.
Let's move right along.
I need to get you a referee shirt and a whistle.
That's all right.
Time now to take a look back at your careers, okay? Are there any decisions that you regret making when it comes to your political or professional career thus far? We'll start with Pam Bondi. You get 30 seconds.
No, I'm very proud of my career. I loved being a prosecutor. I miss trying murder cases. I loved being in the courtroom almost on a daily basis for many years. I loved being a prosecutor. I helped people every single day. That's what motivates me. If anything, it's quite the opposite. I'm glad I ran for office. When I was running in 2010, I was hanging pictures of dead children in my office as my motivation who had overdosed from drugs. Now, 3 weeks ago in Palm Beach, a mother handed me a picture of her child. He was alive because she heard me talking about drugs and got him the treatment he needs. So now I'm hanging pictures of live children. So I love what I'm doing as Attorney General, and we're helping you. We're fighting to help families every day.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Sheldon, your turn, 30 seconds.
Well, you know, over the course of my career, I've served in the legislature. I'm proud to have been voted the most valuable member of the Florida legislature in the early 80s. I'm proud to have served as Deputy Attorney General to Bob Butterworth, the standard by which I think any Attorney General ought to be judged. And I am proud to have been Secretary of the Florida Department of Children and Families during a period of time that we were not getting the negative press that the department is getting today. Even Rick Scott's own transition committee said it was the best managed agency in state government. So the course of the career has not actually been planned by me. Those opportunities came along, and I took them to heart.
Thank you. Mr. Wohlsifer, your turn.
Thank you. I'm proud of my career choices. Making a switch to become a lawyer at age 42, of course, was a tough decision. It was, I'm very proud of that. I brought with my business experience, I had the ability to do it financially at the time, and from there I was successful as a lawyer. I'm proud that I practiced in very different areas of law, to be fully rounded, and as far as my political career, I'm proud to not have had one, because I'm ready for that now. I'm at the end of my career. I look forward to serving 2 terms. I owe nothing to no one. My party owes nothing to no one. No special interest, and we are coming up with a clean slate.
Thank you.
The Trayvon Martin case brought a lot of attention to Florida's Stand Your Ground law. very controversial. I'm wondering, starting with Mr. Sheldon again, do you think it needs any tinkering, any changes?
I do think it needs tinkering. At a minimum, it should not be part of the standard jury instructions. All of the three of the visible cases, the Trayvon Martin case, the movie theater shooting, the shooting because of the loud music, none of those were stand your ground defenses. And yet the jury was instructed on stand your ground. Stand your ground was initially designed to expand the castle doctrine to cover your vehicle. Now it has been interpreted to expand to any place you reasonably have a right to be. I think that fundamentally creates some problems. As Attorney General, I would convene a group of lawyers, of law enforcement, of people in the community to say, all right, how do we realistically deal with that? Rick Scott did that, but it was a pre-assumed conclusion what his committee was going to come out with.
Mr. Wohlsifer, what do you think?
Well, thank you. I think there is some tweaking, and there's concerns, particularly with the Supreme Court case that's coming up for oral argument in December. I'm a strong believer in Second Amendment rights. I believe people have affirmative right to protect themselves and their property, and the stand your ground protects them from criminal violations. I'm glad to see that the legislature this last year added the imminent threat allowance for brandishing a weapon, so we don't see harsh results like Melissa Alexandra serving 20 years for firing a warning shot in her own home. But there is a case, the Brother case, coming up before the Supreme Court that purports to switch the burden of proof on the affirmative defense of stand your ground over to the defendant rather than the state. And I hope that we get a right result in that
Ms. Bondi,
case.
on stand your ground?
I am a firm believer in the Second Amendment. Stand your ground is a law that was passed by our legislature. I'm not a lawmaker. I'm not sure what my opponent means by creating a committee to study it. I think that would be up to the legislature to do that. But my case, my office, we handle every criminal appeal in the state of Florida. And if someone is If stand your ground is asserted as a defense and a jury doesn't buy it and they convict the person and the person goes to prison, I am going to defend the victim and the victim's family in that case, because that is my job as Attorney General.
All right, thanks so much, everybody. Our special edition of Political Connections. The Attorney General debate will continue right after we take a short break. Keep it right here.
Big Jim's Famous Steaks and Tap House. We're your neighborhood pub. Stop by and try one of our famous Philadelphia cheesesteaks and overstuffed sandwiches. Hand-tossed New York-style pizza. Over 45 craft, micro, and domestic beers. Your favorite wines. Jumbo wings and delicious barbecue specials. Relax and catch all the games on one of our big screen TVs. And don't forget our daily drink specials from 4 to 7. Big Jim's Famous Steaks and Tap House. Ulmerton Road in Largo, a quarter-mile west of Starkey. Open 11 a.m. till late.
I laughed, I cried, I told my friends it's a real life drama I recommend. It touches your heart, it opens your mind. It's part of your history, part of our times. And the days are not a sequel, the ending's up to you. The amazing story, the amazing story that never ends.
Your morning news on Bay News 9 is news you can use.
Breaking news unfolding.
Be the first to get the breaking stories of the day. Get a check of the weather every 10 minutes with Clystron 9.
Storms are going to try to move back toward Tampa Bay.
Beat the highway hassle with real-time traffic updates.
US 301 is where you want to be instead of southbound I-75.
We'll show you how to stretch your dollar, how to make that perfect dish, what you can do to stay healthy. Get the news you can use with your morning news on Bay News 9.
Welcome back to our special edition of Political Connections, the Attorney General debate. I'm Yvette Brusoil.
And I'm Al Rochelle. And don't forget, you can join in on the debate on Twitter and Facebook using the hashtag AGDebate.
Thanks. Let's get started with utilities, energy policy, utility rates. Big issue in Florida, especially in the Tampa Bay area with Duke Energy. What do you think about the Attorney General's office being more active or active in intervening in some of these rate cases? And we'll start with you, Ms. Bondi.
Well, let me tell you, we have the Office of Public Counsel, and they were formed in 1974. They are an independent body. When they were formed, it was discussed whether they should fall under the governor, whether they should fall under the AG, and it was determined no, they are an independent body, and they monitor the PSC, who in turn monitors the utility companies. We are in close conversation with the Office of Public Counsel. And as to the Duke rate hikes, the $54 million for a nuclear plant that was never built, Duke needed to give that money back. They absolutely, from day one, should have given that money back to the people. And I wrote a very strong letter to the PSC before those hearings. I have the letter if you want to see it. I wrote a very strong letter saying that Duke needed to give that money back.
Mr. Sheldon.
Well, every Attorney General dating back to Richard Urban, through Bob Butterworth, Charlie Crist, even Bill McCullum, has intervened in utility rate increases, working with the Public Counsel. This Attorney General has not done that. And then, on the night before the Duke Power vote, she sent a letter to the Public Service Commission saying she opposes it after that the train has already left the station. The bottom line is, she's got 400 lawyers in that office. She needs to untie their hands, allow them to be engaged in these utility rate increases.
Do you want to respond for 15 seconds?
Absolutely. We sent that letter before the hearings, and I've been saying Duke needed to give that money back. The PSC, the Office of the Public Counsel, they're an independent office. We monitor them, and we have intervened in a case called Aqua Utilities because they were doing some horrible, horrible things. So yes, I have intervened in a utility case.
Mr. Wohlsifer.
Well, we also have legislation that allows for advance fees to be retained, so in part the legislature has to address that. But what I find curious from my observations as a Floridian since 1985 is the utilities and the Public Service Commission seems to get everything they want every time, always. And there's got to be a reason for that, more of a balance. And I think an introduction of a third party will bring that balance into the debate.
All right, let's take the cameras out to the streets. Again, our next question coming to us from one of our viewers about pill mills. Okay, listen carefully.
Pill mills are a large problem, especially in my area of Pinellas County, and I would like to see how she would handle that and take care of the problems of the pill mills in the city.
All right, you got 60 seconds on this one, Mr. Wohlsifer. We're going to start with you.
Well, pill mill, we're referring here to primarily oxycodone. The Attorney General says we've been eradicated at the pill mill level. That's not the case. Although much has been done, I asked first, how did this arise so much in Florida? How did Florida become where we find 90% or more of this excessive prescription, particularly in South Florida? But you can't just take a hammer where you need a scalpel. A lot of this closing of the pill mills have resulted in increased heroin use. Again, there's no difference between oxycodone and heroin, the same core opioid. Again, I think that access to medicinal marijuana, we have to understand people still have pain. People are going to suffer from pain. They're going to look to alleviate that pain. So we need to free the hands of our physician. The closing of the pill mills has made physicians to the point where they're reluctant to prescribe, and some people are not having access to the medication they need. So I think there was an overreaction.
Ms. Bondi?
Oh, and Michael, thank you for that question, and I'm sorry if you have a loved one who's suffering from it, because everywhere I went, I did not know 7 Floridians were dying a day in 2010 when I was running for office. That's how I found out, and I became obsessed with making it my mission. They had tried for years to pass legislation unsuccessfully, and I'm very proud of our legislation. We have eradicated the pill mills. These are the businesses where the doctors could dispense. Pharmacies can still prescribe. But let me tell you what, the FDA right now, you're going to hear a lot more about the FDA. They have released a drug on the market. And by the way, I'm co-chair of the National Attorneys General Association Substance Abuse Committee. And I have been taking on the FDA, and I will continue to do that, with the issue of a drug called Zohydro. It's one pill. It's 10 times as strong, 8 to 10 times as strong as oxycodone, and it's not tamper-proof. Their advisory panel 11-2 said do not release it. They did anyway. Parents, please participate in drug take-back days. That's my public service message. Clean your cabinets out, because kids are still getting their hands on this. So please participate in drug take-back days.
Mr. Sheldon.
Well, you know, we began seeing this in about 2008, 2009, And actually, the drug prescription monitoring database, which I think was critical, was passed with the support of the Department of Children and Families. My Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Abuse actually pushed that through. But to this day, there is still no state funding. Rick Scott initially opposed the database, and Pam, to my knowledge, has not supported state funding into that. She did find funding this last session to fund it, but it shouldn't be operating on that kind of. I give her a lot of credit on leading the fight on pill mills, but in reality, it was in cooperation with the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration. They were the ones that were leading that effort, trying to get pill mills closed.
All right, can I have a rebuttal on that?
I need rebuttal.
Yeah, go ahead. 10 seconds. Yeah.
10 seconds. I think we have to change the focus to more of a health issue than a criminal issue, that people are patients, not criminals. This broad attack, I've heard the officers from LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, they say I could shut down every source in the city, they're going to pop back up somewhere else. So we have to take a broader
20
approach.
seconds, Pam.
Thank you, and this is very important. I have always been an advocate of the prescription drug monitoring program. The FDA had nothing to do this. This is with state legislation. If anything, the FDA is releasing these drugs on the market. Let me tell you, they refused, and the legislature will tell you this, they refused to fund it, so our great sheriffs came in and funded it with forfeiture funds. This last session, they cut off the funding for it, so I took settlement funds and funded it for 4 years, and hot off the presses, oxycodone deaths have dropped 62%.
All right, you bet.
That just came out.
Let's go ahead and move on and talk about gambling here in the state of Florida, okay? It's time for Florida to open up to Vegas-style gambling. Yes or no, your thoughts? Pam Bondi, we'll start with you. 30 seconds to respond.
No. I'm opposed to the expansion of gambling in the state of Florida. I'm a fourth-generation Floridian. I love our beautiful state. I do not want us to become a Las Vegas, our entire state. Our beautiful beaches, our panhandle, Longboat Key, South Florida. If they could keep it contained, I don't believe they can. So absolutely not. I've also taken on the internet gaming that I believe is illegal in Jacksonville, and we sent Terry Mathis to prison for opening these internet cafes that hurt children as well.
Mr. Sheldon.
Well, the fact of the matter is we already have casino gambling in the state. We have a substantial amount that's run by the Seminole Indian tribe. Ultimately, what we've got to do is make sure that we are protecting the citizens of Florida with casino gambling, that we're getting the appropriate kinds of revenue from it. We need not turn into an Atlantic City. But, and I think that the governor has tried to develop a compact with the tribe, and the legislature is now wrangling with this. I support casino gambling, but I think it's got to be strictly regulated.
Mr. Wohlsifer.
Well, where our Attorney General sees an increase of casino gambling as an increase in crime, I see it as an increase of opportunity for businesses and jobs, and we need jobs. We can control the crime. There's infrastructure in place to do that. I came from New Jersey, not far from where Mr. Sheldon comes from, and saw Atlantic City turn around from pretty much a desolate town to a vibrant resort. So I also see that we've had classes in our society that were suppressed for years, and we've given them advantages so that they can compete in the open market as the Seminoles have. I think that time is, they've had their opportunity, and we should open casino gambling up for entrepreneurs throughout.
Thank you.
Well, we wish we had more time, but our time is coming to an end, so now it's time for our closing statements. We're going to reverse the order. We did it in alphabetical order the first time around. Now we're going to flip it around, which means you got 60 seconds for your closing. Mr. Wohlsifer, you go first.
60 seconds. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for Bright House and Bay News for inviting me to this debate. I'm Bill Wohlsifer. I am the Libertarian candidate. I bring something new to the debate on legal affairs in Florida, and I point out that we have Constitutional Amendment 2 on the ballot. I can win this election because the biggest turnout is going to be for people in favor of Amendment 2. They know I've wrote the Kathy Jordan bill. They know I understand patient access. In fact, our Attorney General has a dereliction of duty for not removing cannabis from Schedule 1 once our legislature found that 0.8% THC level has medicinal value. So our own laws are in conflict. The Attorney General has a role to adjust that. We have a law specifically to do that. I believe that that's why I'm a viable candidate. I point that out because this is the first term we've had a Libertarian candidate for Attorney General, and I look forward to continued discussion between now and Election Day.
Right. Mr. Sheldon, you got a minute.
I also want to thank Bay News 9 and News Channel 13 and these two fine individuals for the discussion we've had. But I think this gives the people of Florida a range of views. I personally believe that doctors and women should make their choice about their reproductive health. Pam Bondi does not. I believe that we ought to allow doctors to prescribe medical marijuana moving forward in a rational way to help people with debilitating conditions. Pam Bondi does not. I believe that we should, as a government, not make decisions about who you can love and who you can't love, particularly when we've now seen the federal and state courts respond. Pam Bondi does not. I believe that we ought to have an aggressive Attorney General looking at utility rate increases and trying to do something about it. There are substantial differences that this election will determine.
Ms. Bondi, 60 seconds to close it up.
Sure. Thank you. And again, thank you to our moderators. Thank you to my opponents for being here. And let me tell you what motivates me, what I said in the very beginning, every day, protecting you, protecting your families against drugs, against synthetic heroin, human trafficking. I will continue to do that with every breath in my body. This is real world experience, and that's what makes it so special being Attorney General. My opponent has run for, he was a state rep, then he unsuccessfully ran for Attorney General. He unsuccessfully ran for Congress. In 2010, when he was supposed to be protecting our kids, working for Department of Children and Families, he said he was going to make a run for governor. He's run for Education Commissioner. This isn't about being a career politician, and for the last 2 years he's been a Washington insider. This is about a Floridian working for you to make this the safest place to live, work, and raise a family, protect you from Medicaid fraud, consumer protection, and all of our great businesses. And I'm so proud, and I ask for your vote on November 4th. Thank you.
Well, this is great. We're going to have Attorney General debates in the future. This is really good. And Adam, thank you so much. Ebeth, thank you so much for joining us. And by the way, you can watch this and another special edition of Political Connections, the Attorney General debate. And where are you going to find it?
You can find it on Bright House Network's local on-demand channel 999 on your Bright House Network's digital cable. Thanks so much for watching.
Keep calm and drive on with Bay News 9, the only station with over 300 live traffic cams. Real-time traffic on Bay News 9, exclusively on Bright House Networks.
Friday. It doesn't get much bigger than this on the Bright House Sports Network Game of the Week. Plant Sickles. The Panthers are a perennial offensive powerhouse, and the Griffins mythology continues with one of the top prospects in the country. Plant Sickles. It's the Game of the Week. Friday night at 7:30 on Bright House Sports Network, HD 1147, exclusively on Bright House Networks.
Tires, tires, tires. If that's what you need, all you have to do is visit your friends at McGee. All sizes, all brands with a McGee warranty. Lifetime balance and rotation, even a price match guarantee. Finding tires is easy. You can do it today. McGeeTire.com. It's only a few clicks away. Great service, great people for over 40 years. Check out our website for specials. There's always one near. For more comfort, traction, and a smoother ride, stop in today at McGee Auto Service and Tires.
Discover the best prices and the best selection of floor coverings in the Tampa Bay area. carpet, tile, laminate, or hardwood. The Carpet Store has it all, in stock and in every price range. We buy direct from the manufacturer, passing the savings on to you. We are a 25-year family-owned and operated business with over 3 generations of flooring experience. Our expert flooring staff is ready to help you today. Visit one of our 3 warehouse showrooms, conveniently located in St. Petersburg, Tampa, and Newport Richey.
Over 400 used cars at Brandon Ford have to go. You want a used vehicle at a lower than auction price? Then for about 10 days, you can buy one at a fraction of its value. That's how long Brandon Ford figures it will take to sell these vehicles. Check out what you'd pay for the used car you want at an auction. Then head to Brandon Ford and buy one for less. When these used cars are gone, this sale is gone. At Brandon Ford in Tampa and at BrandonFord.com. If you want to save on a used car, get to Brandon Ford now.
Priority Health is brought to you by Mattress One. Save 30 to 70% at Florida's largest independent mattress retailer.